Welcome, everybody, to the Between Two Wheels podcast. This is Tyler Janke. On today's show, STDs, sexually transmitted doping. Yeah, it's a thing, and we're going to do a breakdown and kind of some interest. Racing in Georgia. It's going to have we're going to start some domestic racing. Do we need to save cycling from the Everesting thing? It's bothering me. Some things that make you go, some winners and losers, and unwritten rules of cycling. Do you attack in the feed zone? Do you attack on when someone gets a mechanical? We'll talk about that as well. All coming up. Between Two Wheels podcast. This is Tyler Janke, episode 179. Welcome. Hope everyone's doing fine. It's I'm recording this on is this a Tuesday? It's a Wednesday. I don't know. It's difficult knowing what's going on. I'm waiting for my work to kind of get back in the flow of everything. But I'm in the office because I might as well waste my time here. It's a little better recording. So I'm here, and I hope you're there. I've been out riding. I've been really enjoying it, hanging with some of these younger, spry riders. Just gotta get the weight down a little bit. Having a little trouble with that, and maybe it's because I'm riding enough where my fitness is going and I'm doing good, so then I can overindulge to kind of compensate for all the calories I'm burning. I don't know. Weight, it's a written thing in cycling, right? Well, we're talking about some unwritten rules. I don't know why I thought about this is an interesting topic, but I've been rewatching a bunch of these old tours, and you start to see some that really there's some bothersome things that happen in there. So I'm going to go over a few of these unwritten rules and then break down some of these situations. And so we've seen this happen in the tour, right? The most recent crash in the 2019 Vuelta, stage 19, Roglic goes down, a bunch of guys go down, Movistar attacks off the front. Eventually they neutralize that, the officials neutralize that. And Movistar at the time is like, hey, look, and actually you could see it in the documentary, they'd planned that beforehand. So it was all planned and just people wreck. What's weird on that one was the officials neutralized it, or it's some weirdness there. Movistar was upset about it. Roglic was conciliatory about it in a sense. Lopez was not. So there's attacking on that. Like I said, the documentary totally shows that. There was anger. Lopez was really mad at Valverde, and he goes, "Hey, you're disrespecting the jersey." And I'm like, his possible doping doesn't disrespect the rainbow jersey, but attacking on a wreck, that's where you have it. Anyway, we've seen these incidents play out in the past. Let's just go over a few of them. 1989 Tour de France, Greg LeMond, he misses a move. PDM, they attack in a feed zone. Stage 13 that was. Now he was on this team ADR, and they were really, really bad. Matter of fact, I think only maybe he and Eddie Plankert, I'm trying to remember. I know Eddie was on the team, but I'm trying to remember if Eddie was like the only other person that finished that race. It was pretty much decimated, and Greg LeMond did it all on his own. They attack in a feed zone. He's got to end up chasing back to Fignon and Delgado, I think, or Charlie Motet that were off the front. And I don't know if he had a flat in some situation. Anyway, there's some bad stuff in there, and those things happen. We start to see a little bit of a change from some of those attacking in the feed. Well, and you know what? Another one, 1987. While Fignon had attacked here in 89, 87 was another interesting year of attacking. Matter of fact, Jean-Francois Bernard wins. They have a Mont Ventoux time trial. Pretty brutal. He wins at the top. It's pretty exciting. Andy Hampsten does poorly, but Stephen Roche is near the front. Pedro Delgado is near the front. And the next day, there's some climbing involved. Jean-Francois Bernard, yellow jersey, Pride of France. He's going to be the next Bernardino. He gets a mechanical over a second to last climb of the day, and and they attack. They attack when he has this. It thins the field down. He's got to expend a lot of energy getting back to them in between the two climbs. He ends up coming right as he's coming back into the feed zone. Pedro Delgado and Stephen Roche attack him, dropping him out with Lucho Herrera. So there's like another break of 20. So this guy not only got attacked when he had a mechanical, then they attack him in the feed zone as well. And they ended up gaining 4 minutes on him in the day, and he was done for there. And, he never really had another chance at winning the Tour. He ends up coming back as a kind of a domestique, a pretty significant domestique for Miguel Indurain later on. But you started to see this, some I don't know, fair play or waiting for riders. You saw 2001, Tour de France. Jan Ullrich decides when the road goes left, he's going to go straight. He goes into the ditch. Lance Armstrong waits for him. I think that was stage 13 on the 2001 Tour. Laurent Jalibert's now a climber. He's up the road. Lance waits. They go up to the climb. Lance then goes ahead and attacks and dumps Ullrich. But, allowed him to get back into the group. Plus, at that point, they might have had 1 or 2 passes still to go. So it was a little early to get rid of someone else who can help you in there. Then we've got 2003, and I kind of want to come back to the 2003 one here. They're going up Les Ardennes. They go over the Tourmalet first. Ullrich attacks there to thin things out. This is the one where Lance was having a little bit more trouble in the race. I think this was his 5th victory. We'll use those in quotes. But that one was, trouble in the time trial. He was really dehydrated. They kept pecking away at him. Anyway, they come into this stage up to Les Ardennes, and he attacks at the bottom of the climb. Yvon Mile jumps with him. He ends up hooking his handlebars into a kid's musette bag, a little gift thing on the side of the road, pulls him down. He gets back up, and he starts to try to claw his way back up to the group ahead, and he about loses the one bit of manhood he had left on the top tube as his gear slipped. And then Jan Ullrich, Tyler Hamilton, these Yvon Mile, they're all up there. He gets right up to him, and he doesn't even. And they're slowing down, and there was some controversy of whether they had attacked him while he was, down on the ground. And then boom, Lance attacks right straight through him. As I don't even know if they had time to, if they were just still slowing down, and he comes right through and attacks. Takes a minute or 40 some seconds there, and ends up winning that Tour. I will talk about that one a little bit because I just want to kind of Tyler Hamilton, in that same race, he had gone Balaki. Remember, they were coming into Pau, and they're coming down the hill and take a right-hand corner. Balaki goes high side. Lance goes off into the field, does a little cross thing. They didn't wait for Balaki. So, things are different about when you do it and when you don't. Yvon Mile, 2004, they come into the cobbles section and the early part of the race. He crashes early. And right before they get to the cobbles, the Postal Service is nailing up there. They don't wait for him. He had just beaten Lance Armstrong in the Dauphiné Libre that year, Criterium du Dauphiné, whatever you call it now. And so, he was definitely a threat overall, and they dispel of him and don't really do anything else. Then a little bit more modern time. We've got Chris Froome, 2016. Remember, he cracks his bike, carries the fake, the Mavic bike up Mont Ventoux. Then 2017, you have 2 incidences with him. Stage 15, he is, and maybe we'll take a look at that video because there's Eru attacks him as he's getting a mechanical rear derailleur, and then later on he has a stage 15 or so, 19. I don't let's see if I actually wrote it down here. Stage 15. Froome is got a damaged wheel, AG2R. Then it takes off, and he's got to use his whole team to help him out for trying to catch back up. What's really interesting to me on the Rue one is the fact that he attacks, and maybe we can show it here. He ends up attacking when right under Froome's arm. So Froome puts his arm up and calling for his team car. And when he's doing that, he's basically saying, hey, I've got a bike problem. And then what happens is Rue ends up just attacking through this. So while that comes up here, maybe I'll just talk a little bit. So I have a little bit of trouble with all of this. And I wish, and I've mentioned this before, but I wish we just kind of do away with it, these unwritten rules. And partly because it's always, you've got to interpret the circumstance and whether this is the right thing to do. The Lance one up Les Ardennes is always somewhat bothersome to me, and I think the reason for that is that he allows everyone. He has a problem. He rides too close to the side, and he ends up running into someone with a bag. And when he does that, it's not the rider's fault behind. It's obviously his fault, and so we're going to show this here. Okay, so you've got Froome, maybe we can hear that there a little bit. They're going to show here a replay. Okay, so Aru slows down. Let's get to the point where Aru is actually Okay, so here we go. Team's on the front. Froome is talking into his mouthpiece. He's going, hey, I've got some issue. He's wobbling back and forth across the road. There's some issues. Rue's on his wheel. He's on the left side of the road, right as we're looking at it from the front, looking back. He puts his arm up as he, Rue actually ducks under his arm to get past him and then goes up the road and attacks. Okay. That's maybe a little bit of the controversial on that side, but you know what? The reality is, who cares? This is my whole point on this thing is, who cares? He has a bike problem. He has, you're going to always wait. Now, nice that Lance laid it, and it's always your prerogative, I think, if you want to wait. Lance Armstrong waiting for Jan Ulrich going into the ditch totally makes sense. You don't want to, there's only two other guys with him. You don't want to, Laurent Jalibert's up the road and your other guys are behind. You're going to go solo. It's probably going to expend more energy. Wait for Jan, have a team, and you're going to be better off to wait for that thing. But when Lance comes up there and he's on Lutz-Ardiden and everyone waits, I mean, they literally shut it down. They shut down their riding from going in full attack, not necessarily attack mode, but just riding hard tempo mode. And they're weaving across the road. They're looking around. He gets up to them, and then he, boom, hits them again. And they've got to go, they've lost momentum, and now they've got to go back up and then hit it again. It's just, it almost seemed unfair what he was doing, not to mention the fact that he was doped to the gills, but I'm just talking about the strategy stuff. This one here, you got Chris Froome. He's got a bike problem. He ends up, that's whose fault is that? And what if it's like Balaki? Like, why didn't they wait for Balaki when he fell? Oh, because we know Balaki ends up, destroying his hip, and he's really never the rider he was. He didn't finish the race. But what if he got up? What if he just like, not even a flat tire, and he gets up? Well, because he went down and he wrecked. Yes, he wrecked, and it was his fault. Much like the bike, you get flats, you don't get flats, and things happen at different times. So I just thought this was kind of an interesting thing. Attacking in the feed zone, it always seems like it's a bad form. They don't like to do that. I think Phil Guyman's talked about when he was on, he'd attacked in a feed zone when he was on like Kenda, and everyone was yelling at him. And then when he was on Garmin, he was yelling at other people for doing it. So, and he understood the hypocrisy there is kind of the hierarchy that you have in a sense. But for me, I'm not a big fan of the fair play necessarily on those things, because it's what it is. It's kind of the whole thing. I mean, you can wait if you want. You can not wait if you want. But in the end, it's all the bike riding, the staying upright, not getting flats. Those are just things that happen. And it's what it is. No one waited for me at Chico when I got a flat, including the mechanic car. Well, the mechanic car was waiting for me a few miles back, I guess, because it took like 15 minutes for them to finally get there, which was a bit much. Okay, STDs in cycling. Yes, STDs in cycling. Well, what is that? Did you know you could get suspended for an STD? Female boxer is cleared of performance-enhancing doping charges. And I'm like, come on with this. What are we talking about? STDs. We're talking about, let's take here. Let's take a look at this article, because I think it's actually pretty funny. Okay. American boxer, Olympic boxer, and this name, Guinea Fuchs, cleared of doping violation caused by sex. Exoneration of guilt for her failed doping test caps a stressful month. U.S. Olympic team boxer Virginia Fuchs, we'll say Fuchs, just so the folks out there don't get any trouble with their kids, will face no punishment for failing a doping test after the U.S. Anti-Doping Association determined the violation had been caused by two substances transmitted by her boyfriend through sex. Sexually transmitted doping. That's my STD, sexually transmitted doping. USADA announced its ruling Thursday, clearing the 32-year-old Fuchs, who intends to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics next year as a flyweight. Fuchs has served as a recent captain, blah, blah, blah. Coronavirus, blah, blah. Fuchs learned in March, because I just want to get to the interesting part here. Fuchs learned in March that she had tested positive for two banned substances during an out-of-competition test in February. While investigating the tests, USADA learned Fuchs' partner had been taking products that included 2 banned substances, and the levels of Fuchs violation were consistent with recent exposure through sexual transmission. I don't know how they determine that. That seems a little, I don't know. You're kind of leading to a conclusion that I don't know how you can clarify that that's the case. Did they do testing to see if that's like actually what happened? USADA CEO Travis Tigert said the organization confirmed Fuchs violation only because it was required to do so. While the World Anti-Doping Code required that this no-fault finding be considered a violation and be publicly announced, we strongly believe this case and others like it, including meat contamination and prescription medication contamination cases, should be considered no violation, Tiger said. We will continue to advocate for changes to the World Doping Code so that there is no intent to cheat and no performance benefit, and athletes should not face any violation or unnecessary public attention. Fuchs didn't want to comment, but beyond a statement issued by USA Boxing, I had no idea that I could become contaminated by way of intimate contact with another person. I want to thank USA Boxing for believing in me and supporting me through these past few months. I'd be interested in, what does her boyfriend do? Is he a boxer as well? Was he working out? Was he taking performance enhancing? And I didn't really say what it was here that she had, which is also interesting. If you're testing positive, this is why I'm talking about sexually transmitted doping. If you're testing positive, does that mean that there's something in your system? If you're positive, it means something's in your system for you to then transmit it through blood tests or urine samples, right? So something's in your system. Does that mean you're getting a benefit from that? So whether it's intentional or not, totally get it. But is this a way around it? Is this how we're going to do it? It does mention in there it's strict liability. Tommy Danielson and some of these other guys. What's the gentleman who was with Rowley? I'm trying to remember his name, but they're indicating that it's unintentional, that they the Contador contaminated meat, or Rogers had done that as well. But I thought the idea at the time was, even with strict liability on those, which means it doesn't matter what your intent is, it's just if you are caught with it, you are responsible for what goes in your body. So she's still responsible for what goes in her body. Contaminated boyfriend is what it sounds like. I just think it's a little weird. So if she's still testing positive, is she getting a benefit from that? So maybe that's the way you do it. You have sex with someone who's loaded up to the gills with whatever, and then it transmits itself into you, and there you go. Or perhaps maybe some of these drugs are, they used to say they would ban certain types of drugs because they are things that are masking agents for other drugs. So therefore they would, kind of ban the whole environment so that you're not taking something that could lead to something else, even though what you may be taking is not actually anything to do with performance enhancing. I don't know. I thought it was very interesting, and I think that just leaves itself open to too much, because how did they confirm this? Did they go, they didn't say in here, but they would have to test him and say that he's, on whatever that they're getting. And how did she even know to get this? And I think we'll talk about this here in a little bit, because I just mentioned the Lance Armstrong thing. So I finally saw the 30 for 30 ESPN documentary and absolutely loved it. Started watching Saturday night, and next thing you know, it's Sunday morning late or early, and I've been doing this bloodshot eye thing for like 3 hours, but it was fascinating, and I couldn't stop it. And what really you end up seeing in there is, one, he was so powerful that he had, like he mentioned, what kind of control did you have with the UCI? And he's like, well, as far as money goes, zero. Wasn't putting out any money to the UCI. Okay, but then he does it basically elaborate. He gets on a phone call and he makes these calls. His Swiss positive in the Tour Swiss before the 1999 Tour, and I mean, it might have been a few years before that, but that came out, and he's like, I just gave him a call. They were like McQuaid, I think, who was in charge of it, and they made Andre Legrand, I don't remember who the UCI president was at the time, but they made it go away, or they caused it to be one that you can use as a cream, so it was okay. And he had all that kind of power. Tyler Hamilton later on comes in there and says he was he ran up. I think he won, or he was very close to. He beat Lance, at least on Mont Ventoux time trial in the Dauphiné prior to the Tour. And he's like, he had heard rumors that Lance was pissed off about that and had called the UCI. Next thing you know, that night, the UCI is all over Tyler Hamilton about testing, and then so you know that's the end of his career that season. So we don't know. The point I'm getting at is here. I don't know if there's some sort of involvement with this girl, and I don't think she has any power, but it is a little odd that they just take for when all these other things you have to fight and fight and fight. You know, they reduced. They didn't let him off. They reduced Tommy Danielson's last positive because they said, oh, I think we're able to show that it's contaminated products, even though those products themselves may say it's all clear and ready to go and good. But point is, I don't know. Seems weird. Seems a little shaky. Last thing, my first goal in boxing was always to be an Olympian and get a gold medal, Fuchs said. That's why I waited another 4 years after Rio. All of these last 4 years, I worked hard for it. It's not going to go to waste. I still want to get that gold medal. Well, she got the gold medal with the boyfriend, and good luck to her and him, and I hope he's not contaminating anyone else in and around boxing and or any other sport. Okay, racing in Georgia. So I heard from Mark Tucker, Velo Kings racer, guy here in Northern California, current district/state road race champion in, what is it? I'm not sure what age group he is, but he's a Masters. He and Bagley are heading down to Georgia to do the Tour of North Georgia, and I think that's pretty cool. So we're going to actually talk to him before he goes, and then when he's down there, we'll catch up with him a few times and kind of see this. So maybe we'll take a look at what the actual racing looks like, what they have going on there. So it looks like to me they say it's 2 parts. So it's June, 4 days in June, 4 days in July, and it's like an 8-stage omnium. So I don't know if he's going to go back and forth for both of them, but it looks pretty cool. You've got, time distances, so maybe crits. I don't know if they're doing some time trials. We'll talk to him. There's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then probably the next one, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Good for him. 6-mile time trial on the Saturday, and then road race at 3:30. So 80 miles. Here we go. So these are miles, not minutes. So you have a Friday, you have a minutes, and then you have a miles race. 48, 50. They're not doing too big, and 60 miles. So we'll talk to him. We'll see what we'll kind of have the thing with Sean Bagley and him, what they have going on, and what and how this is going. This might be the first racing we have going on in in domestic in the U.S. I don't know if there's anything else really taking off. We're not really doing that. I just filled out a survey for the NCNCA, whether we're, would you pay more to do a race out in the middle of nowhere? Because it probably might have some trouble. That's one of the things you're going to have is they may be able to start racing again, but are these areas and these cities going to permit it to, and when I mean permit it, I mean like actually issue a permit for you to use their roads in town, because they might not want you there. They might want, some of those businesses might actually want business so they can make some money, but the town itself might be a little concerned about it, so they might not actually be allowing and issuing permits. And if that's the case, then are you willing to go out and do a race that's a little bit further? Are you willing to pay a little more maybe if they have to, to permit a race in town? Everesting, this is the new big deal with cycling now. And Lachlan Morton, he's best known for, hey, if you've got an amateur race out there of no importance, he will go out and do it and probably win and set some sort of record. So in due form and to follow with that whole theory, he's Lachlan Morton, set a new Everesting record in the time of 7 hours, 32 minutes, 54 seconds on Saturday. EF Pro Cycling Rider rode 42 repeats of a 1.9 kilometer, 11% grade wrist canyon climb outside Fort Collins. Pretty sure I've done that. Morton's, and this is what's weird about this, his 8,848 meter ascent ride totaled just under 170 kilometers. The Australian's effort breaks the previous record set by U.S. national mountain bike champion Keegan Swenson, named to the long team. of the Olympics. Swenson had set a time of 7 hours, 40 minutes, 5 seconds in May. What's interesting in this one is 1.9 kilometer climb. It's not very long, so he did 40 some repeats of it, and it just seems interminable. I don't know. I might actually prefer to do like a longer climb, but this seemed to work for him. Swenson took the loss of his title with good humor, saying on Instagram feed, Lachlan Morton just raised the Everesting bar, and he did it at altitude, and it should be done as it should be done. Everesting, people were getting into it. They're getting excited about it. They seem to be thinking it's kind of the thing to do in the Corona atmosphere that we have. Personally, not a big fan. Doesn't seem to be all that exciting to me, but good for him. It's like 7 hours out there. Katie Hall had set one for the women, and then it got destroyed by someone else. So it is interesting to see the pros, just like Strava. They'll come in, they'll take over, they'll do everything they need to do, and to make it a little bit more exciting. So Tour de France. Tour de France is going to come up. We'll have the Giro before that. And what we have on tap here is a chance for someone. We'll either have another one in the 5-win category for Chris Froome, or he's going to be the only one set at 4 wins. Lance Armstrong blew through that. And I'm going to give him credit. Watching those tours, Lance did things strategically that were pretty exceptional all the time. And there's something to be said for that. It's also something to be said about how little he crashed, how little he flatted, and being able to do the win. You got to it's amazing to get through the stuff like that. I tend to keep him on the list because everyone was doped to the gills back then. I don't know. You might have had different winners. And it's hard to even tell what that is. There was just an article that came out by Velo News that did a comparison, because it's hard to tell routes from routes. Hey, look at the time that they did at Mont Ventoux, or look at the time that they did at Alpe d'Huez, before, and now look how much faster they're doing. But what you don't know is weather. You don't know about, the fatigue of the times leading up to that. So what they were actually able to do was one time trial locked of something or other that they've done several times in the Tour de France, and being able to, it's kind of like 19th stage 3 or 4 times, the exact same route. And so they were able to give some comparisons of times over the years. And the interesting fact being kind of like the Lance Armstrong, I think it came into from like when Greg LeMond had done it, and then Breukink had done it, and it was like, Breukink had started to do in the aerodynamic era, and he was pretty close to Greg LeMond's time, and then from 86 to 90 something in there, and then you go 95 when Indurain comes in and just blows it out by 5 minutes, and then you start to see the differences where even the last guy, everyone was adjusted by 5 minutes. Such as like even the last place rider was 5 minutes ahead of what the other one. So those are maybe a little bit more than marginal gains, and you're trying to say, oh, I see what's going on. And Greg LeMond had complained about after the 90 Tour, which he wins 86, 89, 90, and then 91. He's like things just start to get out of control. Well, now he was having some health issues. I think 92 was maybe his last year, but he's like he can barely hang on anymore, and you start to see that, and so what do we have here? I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of talk about some of the multiple time winners. You had 3 3-time winners, Greg LeMond. You had Luzon Bobet, Thies Philippe was back in the early 20s, so we'll just kind of skip him. Luzon Bobet was in the 50s. What's interesting, you see some of these like Luzon Bobet, Jacques Gancotil, which was a 5-time winner. They end up, I think both of them, their first time doing the tour, they end up winning it. And Bobet was kind of him, and then he skipped a few years, and then he'd come back, and he won it again, won 3 of them, and then all of a sudden the next year he didn't want to do it, and Anquetil got put on the French team, and he goes and wins it with his first time. So there's some 5-time winners, Bernard Hinault, Eddie Merckx, Jacques Anquetil, and Miguel Indurain. We know, and I just want to say kind of their last 5th win is always a tough one. Although Indurain, he wins in 1995, about 4 minutes over Alex Zülle, and Zülle did horrible in the 2 time trials. Basically, took all his time from them. As a matter of fact, Zülle took 2 minutes out of him on one of the first big mountain stages. But anyway, times there, he wins by 4 minutes, and all his wins were like 4 or 5 minutes, and he just destroyed everyone in the time trial. It was 1996 for him, where suddenly Bjarne Riis, who I think was third in 95, now comes in and just, this is the guy that's so doped up. I think he's, Mr. whatever, 60 something, Mr. 70 something on his hematocrit, and he is over the top on those on his numbers, and he ends up just destroying. How to come, I think, was one of the stages there. It was a really shortened stage due to the weather, and he just ignites it from the bottom and destroys everybody for being doped like nothing else. Anyway, so Indurain had a tough time. He couldn't get even close on, I think it was 11th overall in 1996. Anquetil won his first race in 57, the first time he tried. And then he didn't do 58, 59, or he did one of those, I think. And then he came back in 61 and won from 61 to 64. And after his fifth win in 64, he didn't race in 65. It's kind of odd. And then in 66, he quit. He was too sick and just having trouble, so wasn't able to stick with it. Eddie Merckx, similar to him, where he comes in and wins, and then he has some times off, and then his last tour, he ends up winning it and then doesn't come back. Then you have which everyone knows about that. The 1985 tour promises Greg LeMond, and but for Greg LeMond kind of backing off and not really trying to win it himself, it would have been difficult for Bernardino. And then 86, he couldn't win, obviously, because of Lance Armstrong. So we got Chris Froome. So 2017 is his last win. And we're wondering, 2018, he didn't win the 2018 tour, obviously. That was Geraint Thomas, and helped him out. He had a weird year with his, won the Giro and then wasn't really quite at the same thing. And then, 2019, he ends up faking a crash in in the Dauphiné, so he wasn't able to participate in the tour with Bernal winning. And with Bernal and some of these other riders, I just don't know that Froome has it in him to get past 4 wins. But he's been in and around, and the 2017 one wasn't an easy one for him either. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially with the shortened season. Maybe some riders won't come in quite the same. Maybe he's able to capitalize. But do we get a 4-time winner? We have a 7-time/0 winner. Then we have these 5, this big group of 5, and then no one's been in the 4. Every 4 has been able to get to 5 or 7. And then you have the 33. So last thing we'll talk about here is how about some things that make you go, No, I don't have anything for that. I just talked about Lance Armstrong earlier and his 30 for 30. I think it is a great thing to do. People change, and you can see in this 30 for 30 that near the end of it, he is really taking, they say, and there's been some misquoting out there, would you change anything? And when they say, would you change anything? He's like, no. And everyone's like, oh my God, he would dope again. I think that's what he meant. But then he goes on to actually explain it I wouldn't be the person I am now if it wasn't for going through all this. So he seems to be at ease with where his life is, and having, he made a point there of sticking too long with Sheryl Crow. She's a famous person. He's a famous person. He's like, I didn't really want to be dating her anymore, but you couldn't really back out of it. And then he talked about his wife, how he just left that situation. He's like, I still got some of that flight in me that he just wanted to take off. So I think he's changing himself and trying to be a better person. And then with that, he says, oh, life's kind of bad. And he's like, well, it could be worse. I could be the POS, wake up a piece of S that Floyd Landis is every day. He wakes up and he's just a piece of shit. That's what he says. And you're like, wow. And then there's just some other times in there where he's in front of places and he's talking about what just hate on Floyd Landis. And what did Floyd do? Floyd was the one that blew the whistle. So he says that at one point, I would not be who I am today if I didn't have to go through all of this, and kind of thankful for that. But he's not thankful for the person that made him go through all of that. I don't know. That's what we have. So thanks, everyone, for joining us for another grand edition of the Between Two Wheels podcast, 179 episodes in. We're going to talk to Mark Tucker this next week, get his input on the Tour of Georgia or Tour in North Georgia. and see how that's going. So everyone, find the show. Why don't you rate and review us? Subscribe to us on YouTube. Check us out on our YouTube, on our Facebook page, everywhere else. Seriously, go out there just right now. Just click, rate it. Rate it 5. Say, whatever. I like it. Between Two Wheels Podcast, episode 179. Tyler Janke. Take care, everybody.